Welcome to the Sleepy Scribe. Your endless internet wandering has brought you here, and hopefully you can finally sleep to today's topic. Now, before we begin, comment where you are listening from, and how late it is where you are. It is very interesting to see how far and wide people come to find peace here. Lastly, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, it would be very appreciated. Now, let us begin. In the beginning, before thunder had a name and before the world had order, there was a sky without stars and a sea without waves, and from this primordial nothingness came chaos, an emptiness so vast it breathed. From chaos came Gaia, the earth, round and full of womb-like warmth, and Uranus, the sky, who stretched above her like a ceiling painted in pale blue silk. Together they birthed many children, mighty titans with eyes like molten bronze and spirits as wild as storms. But Uranus, afraid of their power, stuffed his children deep within Gaia's belly, burying them in the dark caverns of the earth where they groaned like shifting mountains. Gaia, groaning too, could bear it no longer. So with hands of stone and fury like a cracking earthquake, she crafted a sickle and whispered to her youngest son Kronos, who had a serpent's cunning and a lion's pride. Kronos took the sickle, and when Uranus came to lie upon Gaia again, Kronos struck with a howl like thunder. Blood fell into the sea, birthing furies, giants, and from the foam, a goddess called Aphrodite, lovely as moonlight on still water. Kronos freed his siblings, and they crowned him king, wrapping him in golden laurels and draping him in power. But power is a greedy thing, always looking over its shoulder. So when Gaia whispered of a prophecy that Kronos too would be undone by his child, he swore to escape fate's jaws. Each time Rhea, his sister and queen, bore a child, Kronos swallowed it whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all devoured before they could cry. His belly grew heavy with divinity, like a storm cloud full of lightning yet to strike. But Rhea, weary of birthing only to lose, hatched a plan when her sixth child stirred in her womb. She fled to the Isle of Crete, where sacred goats bleated in caves veiled in ivy and moss. There, beneath a stalactite sky, she birthed Zeus, a boy with eyes like the dawn and cries like rolling thunder. She swaddled him in soft cloth and gave Kronos a stone wrapped the same. The Titan king gulped it down without a second glance, as though fate could be fooled by such things. Meanwhile, little Zeus suckled on goat milk and was rocked by nymphs who sang lullabies in voices soft as breeze through pine. As he grew, the cave rang with laughter, and the world above remained unaware. In secret, he learned to wield power like a blade. He studied the cracks in the world and the movements of stars. His strength grew with the silence of an approaching storm. One day, when his beard first sprouted like moss upon stone and his voice echoed like a lion's roar, he descended from the cave, cloaked in destiny. He journeyed to Metis, the cleverest of all goddesses, whose thoughts flowed like rivers and pooled into deep wells of wisdom. She brewed him a potion made of mountain ash, honey, and bitter herbs, and together they returned to face Kronos. With a cup in hand and a voice like silver bells, Zeus offered the drink to his father, who, suspicious but vain, drank it in one long gulp. At once, Kronos heaved and groaned, and from his belly burst the gods he had swallowed, not dead but radiant, reborn like seeds from rich soil. Hestia with her calm flame, Demeter with grain in her hair, Hera with eyes like judgment, Hades with shadows clinging to his cloak, and Poseidon with oceans swirling in his veins. The children of Kronos stood together, taller than mountains, eyes burning with divine wrath. War thundered across the cosmos like a drumbeat. The Titans stood with Kronos atop Mount Olympus, wielding mountains and hurling fire. Zeus and his siblings took Mount Olympus, newly sacred, where clouds circled like hawks and winds howled songs of vengeance. For 10 years the battle raged, the Titanomachy, a war so fierce the earth cracked and the seas boiled. Lightning flashed like swordplay in the sky, and mountains split in two. Gaia, weary of bloodshed, whispered of a secret weapon buried deep in Tartarus. The Hecatoncheires, monstrous beings with 50 heads and 100 arms, and the Cyclopes, who forged thunder, lightning, and storms. Zeus descended into the black pit of Tartarus, where shadows clung to him like cobwebs and screams echoed like distant storms. He freed the prisoners, and in gratitude, they gifted him with thunderbolts forged from the bones of stars. Poseidon was given the trident that could stir the oceans into whirlpools of fury, and Hades received a helm of invisibility darker than moonless midnight. With these weapons, the Olympians returned to war. Zeus hurled bolts like meteors, blinding and brutal. Poseidon summoned waves high as mountains to crash upon Titan strongholds. Hades slipped unseen behind enemy lines, unraveling their plans like thread from a tunic. One by one, the Titans fell. Kronos stood last, tall and terrible, wielding the sickle that once unmade the sky. But Zeus, radiant and wrathful, struck him down with a bolt that split the heavens. The Titans were chained and thrown into Tartarus, guarded by the hecatonch Hades. Zeus, crowned with lightning and robed in storm clouds, rose as king. He divided the realms with his brothers. Poseidon took the sea, deep and ever-changing. Hades claimed the underworld, dark and silent. Zeus kept the sky, vast and thunderous. Olympus bloomed into a palace of marble and gold, where ambrosia flowed like wine and laughter danced through columns. But peace is a fleeting creature, quick to flee at the scent of pride. Zeus, though powerful, was not content to rule alone. His eyes wandered like comets, ever chasing beauty. And so began the great loves of Zeus, some tender as spring rain, others tragic as a dying star, all woven through time like golden thread through tapestry. Each love lit a new spark in the world, and each tale unfolded like a flower, both beautiful and thorned. And thus, the tale of Zeus's many hearts began. Now that the sky belonged to him and the thunder answered only his call, Zeus sat atop Olympus as king, his throne carved from cloudstone and streaked with veins of lightning, high above the world of mortals and gods. Yet for all the splendor and power swirling about him like a storm ready to strike, his heart wandered restlessly, a stallion unbroken, galloping after beauty wherever it flickered. His first true longing was not for conquest but companionship, and it led him to Metis, the goddess of wisdom, whose thoughts curled like ivy and whose voice rippled like the hush before revelation. She was not the kind to fall easily. Her mind saw through flattery like clear water sees the stones beneath. Yet Zeus, ever cunning, ever relentless, pursued her across land and sea, shifting into creatures and cloud, whispering promises like songs on the wind. Eventually, she relented, moved not by charm but by the threads of fate she herself could see. From their union came a prophecy, spoken in a voice that trembled the roots of Olympus. The child born of Metis would be greater than its father. Zeus, struck by the same fear that once haunted Kronos, acted not with rage but with a quiet terror masked in calculated calm. When Metis next lay beside him, he opened his mouth and swallowed her whole, wisdom and all, just as Kronos had swallowed his own children. But Zeus was not Kronos, and fate had grown cleverer still. From within him, Metis remained alive, whispering thoughts like soft winds behind his eyes, shaping his decisions, refining his rule. Time passed, and one day Zeus was struck by a pain in his head so sharp it rang like a chime through Olympus. He bellowed, and gods gathered, uncertain. Hephaestus, the smith god with hands burned by forge and fate, lifted his hammer and struck his father's skull. From the split sprang Athena, fully grown, clad in armor that shone like morning dew on steel, eyes wide with the calm fury of battle, wisdom dancing in her gaze. She stepped forth not as a babe but as a warrior, and the gods were struck dumb by the beauty and power of her birth. Zeus, now both father and cradle, welcomed her with pride, for she posed no threat to his throne, only balance to his rule. But though wisdom now dwelled within him, Zeus's heart still wandered like a river seeking the sea. His eyes next fell upon the Mys, the titan of divine law, who walked like twilight and spoke like justice itself. With her, he fathered the Houri, goddesses of the seasons, who spun the year with hands soft as falling leaves, and the Moirai, the Fates, who measured mortal lives with golden thread and shears sharp as silence. Yet this was not love burning with heat, it was a union of structure, like marble meeting mortar. For passion, Zeus looked to Mnemosyne, memory herself, a titan with a gaze that reached backward into every song ever sung. He lay with her for 9 nights beneath a sky jeweled with stars, and from that union came the Muses, 9 daughters who gave voice to history, poetry, dance, and the arts. Wherever they stepped, inspiration bloomed like fire across the minds of mortals. Still, none of these loves captured Zeus fully, not in the way his next would. For he turned to Hera, his sister, regal and unwavering, with eyes like polished stone and a stare that weighed the soul. She resisted him with a fury that sang like a blade drawn in moonlight. Zeus, never one to be refused, transformed himself into a cuckoo bird, feigning weakness, wings dampened by rain. Hera, moved by pity, cradled the shivering creature to her breast. In that moment, he returned to his true form, and in awe and fury, she agreed to marry him, binding the sky to the hearth. Their wedding was grander than any the world had ever known. All gods and creatures came to Olympus, where nectar flowed in rivers and laughter echoed like wind through trees. Gaia herself gifted them a tree of golden apples, tended in the garden of the Hesperides. But if their love was a fire, it was one constantly fanned by wind and choked by smoke. Hera, queen of the gods, fierce in loyalty and iron in jealousy, would not tolerate betrayal, and Zeus, for all his thunder, strayed again and again. His heart was a map without compass, wandering into forests, valleys, and mortal homes. He came to Leto, shy and radiant, who bore him the twin deities Apollo and Artemis, sunlight and moonlight embodied. But Hera, enraged, chased Leto from land to land, denying her a place to give birth. Only the floating island of Delos welcomed her, and there she brought forth her children beneath swaying palms and starlight. Zeus, despite his roaming eye, often shielded his mortal lovers with trickery or disguise. He came to Danae as golden rain, slipping through cracks in stone, for her father had locked her in a tower of bronze to keep her untouched. From this shimmering union came Perseus, slayer of Medusa, hero born from light. He approached Europa as a white bull, so gentle and calm she climbed upon his back, only to be carried across the sea to Crete, where he loved her beneath olive trees and star-choked skies. From their union came kings and legends. Yet each love brought ripples, sometimes blessings, sometimes curses. Semele, mortal and beloved, asked to see Zeus in his true form, urged on by Hera in disguise. Bound by a god's oath, he revealed himself, a storm-given flesh, and she burned away like parchment in flame, though from her ashes Dionysus was born, god of wine and madness, cradled in Zeus's own thigh until he could walk the world. Zeus came to Alcmene as her husband, cloaked in mortal form, and from that night sprang Hercules, the mightiest of all demigods, whose labors would stretch across time like echoes in a canyon. But always Hera followed, vengeance in her breath, setting trials, serpents, and madness in the path of those Zeus had touched. Still, Zeus continued, not out of cruelty but because his love was boundless, uncontainable, like the sky itself, always expanding, never still. His passions carved mountains, started wars, and birthed empires. To love Zeus was to touch fire, warming, illuminating, and inevitably burning. Through his many unions, both divine and mortal, Zeus wove a tapestry of gods and heroes, each a thread in the grand fabric of myth, golden and stained alike. His love was the lightning before the storm, brilliant, brief, and unforgettable. And so the thunder rolled on. But the thunder never quieted for long. No sooner had Zeus wrapped his arms around one flame than another flickered on the horizon, drawing his gaze like a moth's to candlelight. For all his godhood, his desires were as mortal as breath and just as fleeting. And the earth, for all its vastness, seemed a garden of endless temptation. One morning, when the sun hung low and golden as honey dripping from the sky, Zeus looked down upon the plain of Thebes, where a girl named Io walked, her footsteps light as dewfall. She was a priestess of Hera, her skin glowing like polished ivory, and her eyes the color of cloud-shadowed sea. Zeus watched her from Olympus, and desire stirred within him like a wind rustling the pines. But Hera's jealousy had grown sharp, coiled like a viper beneath her jeweled crown, and Zeus knew that if he approached openly, the storm would strike. So he cloaked the sky in a curtain of thick fog, blotting out the sun until day felt like dusk. In that grey silence, he descended to Io, whispering sweet nothings in a tongue older than wind, and Io, though afraid, felt her heart quake like a leaf caught in a breeze. But the mist could not blind Hera forever. Suspicious of the sudden storm, she descended as well, and Zeus, caught mid-tryst, panicked. To hide Io, he transformed her into a white cow, her eyes still wide with fear and soul intact within her new form. Hera, feigning innocence, asked to keep the cow as a gift. Zeus, cornered by his own cleverness, could only nod. Hera tethered the cow to an olive tree and placed Argus to guard her, a giant with 100 eyes, no two ever asleep. Io, trapped within her bovine body, wept silently, her tears forming pearls in the grass. But Zeus, ever unwilling to leave his loves abandoned, sent Hermes, the swift-footed trickster, to free her. With a lyre and silver tongue, Hermes lulled Argus into slumber, one eye at a time, until the 100th flickered shut. Then he struck, swift as lightning, and Io was set loose. Furious, Hera sent a gadfly to torment the girl, stinging her relentlessly so that she fled across continents, her hooves leaving prints in lands that would one day bear cities. She crossed deserts and mountains, swam seas, and finally found sanctuary in Egypt, where Zeus restored her form and she bore a son, Epiphus, whose blood would ripple through dynasties. Yet not all of Zeus's loves ended in such sorrow. Sometimes, he gave gifts that glowed rather than burned. When he came to Callisto, a huntress devoted to Artemis, he did so disguised again, for she had vowed chastity. He took on the form of Artemis herself, drawing near with laughter on his lips. But Callisto, once she learned the truth, was heartbroken. Still, she carried his child, and when Artemis discovered the truth, the huntress was cast out, her womb a mark of betrayal. Hera, ever watchful, turned Callisto into a bear, and later, her son nearly slew her in the forest. To save them, Zeus flung them into the heavens, where they still turned through the night as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, mother and child painted in starlight. Zeus's desire was not always masked in guile. Sometimes it arrived like a storm on the horizon, undeniable, unhidden. When he looked upon Ganymede, a Trojan prince so beautiful that even the gods wept to see him, he acted with the swiftness of wind. In the form of a great eagle, he swept down from the sky and carried Ganymede aloft, not to a hidden grove or shaded vale, but to Olympus itself. There, the boy became cupbearer to the gods, golden pitcher in hand, pouring nectar with grace unmatched. Hera, of course, bristled at this, but Zeus would not yield. Ganymede, youthful and ageless, became a symbol of divine beauty, and in time, Zeus placed him among the stars as Aquarius, pouring the waters of the heavens across the earth. So many were the loves of Zeus that they dotted the world like seeds scattered from a stormy palm. He came to Leda as a swan, his feathers white as snow and eyes dark with intent. Beneath the whispering willows beside a still lake, their union produced eggs from which hatched Helen, whose beauty would one day set 1,000 ships to sail, and Clytemnestra, as sharp as any dagger drawn in the dark. With Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, Zeus's desire turned to pursuit. She fled him across sky and sea, through the form of a fish, a goose, and even a lioness. But he matched her shape for shape, until finally she too bore a child, Helen, again, in some tellings, for myths shift like smoke when touched. And with Europa, his heart softened once more. She played by the sea, gathering flowers in her hem, when Zeus, as the gentle white bull, knelt before her. Entranced by his calm nature and beauty, she climbed upon his back. He rose, then ran, into the waves, across the wine-dark sea to Crete, where he loved her beneath cypress trees and promised her stars and kingdoms. Their children would rule mighty lands, and Europa's name would echo forever across maps and myths alike. But not all hearts Zeus touched were his out of desire. Sometimes it was necessity, or fate's strange weaving. When he came to Persephone, it was not as a lover, but as a father-in-law. He permitted Hades, his brother cloaked in night, to take her as bride, though Demeter wept and the earth grew barren. His decision rippled through the world, shaping seasons and sorrow. And when mortals grew proud, too proud, building towers and cities and daring to rival the gods, Zeus would strike, not with passion, but with judgment. The flood sent upon Deucalion's age, the lightning that shattered the boast of Salmoneus, the punishment of Lycaon who dared feed human flesh to a god, all were done with hands that had once cradled lovers. For Zeus, in the end, was a god not only of desire, but of balance, of law in the guise of chaos. His loves were comets streaking through the dark, brilliant, burning, and gone too soon, but their echoes rang forever, in stars, in names, in the rise and fall of nations. Each heart he touched changed the world a little more, like drops of rain carving stone over time. And above it all, he watched, the sky his cloak, the thunder his voice, forever loving, forever judging, forever Zeus. But even the wide heavens could not hold the fullness of Zeus's passions, for they spilled over like a goblet brimming too high with nectar, each drop tumbling into the mortal world and birthing myths that clung to time like ivy to marble. His love came not just as golden rain or whispering wind, but as dreams, as beasts, as flame disguised in tenderness. Each tale stitched itself into the grand tapestry of life below Olympus, and each lover carried the spark of godhood, whether blessing or burden. There was Antiope, daughter of Nycteus, whose beauty seemed carved from moonlight. She lived in the valley where the grass grew as soft as velvet and the rivers hummed lullabies to the stones. Zeus came to her as a satyr, mischievous and wild, dancing through the trees with eyes that gleamed like secrets. From their meeting sprang twin sons, Amphion and Zethus, one with a soul of music and the other with the strength of mountains. Abandoned and scorned, Antiope wandered in shame until her sons grew to manhood and avenged her, building the walls of Thebes with music and might, the sound of Amphion's lyre making stones leap into place like trained hounds. And then came Aegina, daughter of the river god Asopus, who shone like a pearl against the muddy banks. Zeus took her away in the form of an eagle, his wings slicing through clouds like blades through silk, carrying her to a solitary island that would one day bear her name. There, amid olive trees and whispering winds, she bore him Aeacus, a just and wise king who would sit as judge in the underworld, deciding the fate of souls like a gardener choosing which flowers to tend. Yet Hero's wrath followed like a shadow on the sun. Enraged by Zeus's latest dalliance, she struck the island with plague, its people falling like petals in drought. Zeus, moved by grief, turned ants into men, myrmidons, loyal and tireless, born from earth itself. From them would descend Achilles, swift and doomed, a storm in mortal form. So too did Zeus cross paths with Niobe, though not as a lover but through legacy. She was daughter of Tantalus, mother of many, and wife to Amphion. She mocked Leto, proud mother of only two, forgetting that those two were Apollo and Artemis. In her pride, she cursed herself, for Leto's children struck down Niobe's brood one by one, arrows flying like falling stars. Niobe fled to Mount Sipylus, where her weeping turned her to stone, a cliff that still cries to this day, tears seeping through rock like memories too stubborn to fade. Another thread in the gods' tangled web was Semele, daughter of Cadmus, princess of Thebes, whose beauty bloomed like the first rose of spring. Zeus loved her deeply, not just with fleeting lust but with a gentleness rare in him. He visited her in secret, cloaking himself in shadow and warmth. But Hera, clever as ever, came to Semele in disguise, whispering venom sweetly, "If he is truly Zeus, let him show you his divine form." Driven by doubt, Semele asked, and bound by a god's vow, Zeus revealed himself. The lightning that danced across his skin, the thunder in his breath, the blinding fire of divinity, it all consumed her instantly, leaving only ashes and a flickering heartbeat. But inside her burned a godchild, and Zeus, in grief and wonder, plucked him from her womb and sewed him into his own thigh. In time, Dionysus emerged, god of wine, madness, and ecstatic rebirth, always laughing, always dancing on the edge of reason. And still, the god's hunger for beauty was not sated. When he beheld Alcmene, wife of Amphitryon and descendant of Perseus, his heart stirred once more. To approach her, Zeus disguised himself as her husband, returning home from war. He lengthened the night, stretching it into 3, weaving dreams and love into a tapestry so flawless even Alcmene did not suspect. From this union came Heracles, the strongest of mortals, fated for torment and triumph. Hera, furious once more, sent serpents to his cradle, but the infant strangled them with chubby fists, a foreshadowing of his mythic strength. His life would be forged in fire and labor, a saga carved across the world. Yet not all of Zeus's conquests were cloaked in deceit or storms. With Dione, a lesser goddess whose grace shimmered like silk in sunlight, he fathered Aphrodite in some tellings, though others say she rose from sea foam. Still, her presence among the gods felt like the aftermath of a great storm, calm, radiant, and stirring hearts to chaos. She carried beauty like a blade, and even Zeus, who fathered her in form or fate, stood humbled before her gaze. Then there was Electra, one of the Pleiades, stars who danced in the heavens. With her, Zeus sired Dardanus, ancestor of the Trojans. Their union did not burn with the fury of forbidden passion but glowed gently, like stars reflecting on a midnight lake. And so the sky churned endlessly above the mortal realm, for though Zeus ruled from his throne wrapped in cloud and marble, his gaze seldom lingered in one place. Like a river swollen with spring melt, his affections surged and twisted, seeking new channels, carving myths into the earth and bloodlines into time itself. The wind that blew through Olympus often whispered names, each one attached to a story half told, a heart half broken, a fate half blessed. And among these names, few were as drenched in sorrow and prophecy as that of Leto. Leto, soft-spoken and dusk-colored, moved with the grace of evening shadows and the quiet knowledge of old secrets. She was one of the Titanides, born of Coeus and Phoebe, older than many gods yet gentler than most. When Zeus cast his gaze upon her, it was not with the ravenous hunger he had shown others, but with the longing of the wind for silence. Their union was one of still water and glimmering stars, quiet but deep. But when Hera learned of Leto's swelling belly, her rage was like wildfire let loose upon a dry plain. She forbade every land and island from giving Leto refuge, and so the expectant mother wandered the earth, her feet blistered, her heart heavy, her belly aching with the weight of unborn gods. She roamed across valleys and hills, her eyes ever pleading, but the earth shuddered beneath her and the waters turned their backs. No place would welcome the woman Zeus had touched. At last, the floating island of Delos, unanchored and adrift like a leaf on the sea, welcomed her. There, with no roof but the sky and no midwife but the breeze, Leto gave birth to Artemis beneath a palm tree, her cries mingling with the lapping of gentle waves. The pain had not passed before she turned and bore another, Apollo, golden as dawn, who would one day carry the sun itself upon his back. The twin deities, divine from their first breath, stood protectively beside their mother as the stars blinked approval above. But Hera's wrath never slept. She sent Python, a serpent so vast its scales were valleys, to hound Leto. The creature slithered after her with venom dripping from its fangs like black rain, but Apollo, barely days old, rose with bow in hand, his arrows sharp as starlight. He chased the beast to the slopes of Mount Parnassus and slew it in a blaze of golden fury, his music and war intertwined. Thus, the oracle of Delphi was claimed, and from that mountain, Apollo's voice would guide kings and beggars alike for centuries to come. Yet while Leto's tale was one of quiet strength and redemption, others were written in fire and stone, in betrayal and broken bones. Consider Salmoneus, king of Elis, mortal and pride-swollen, who dared to mimic Zeus. He rode through his city with thunderous drums and flaming torches, proclaiming himself the god of sky and lightning. He built bridges of bronze to echo like thunder and cast sparks into the air as if to mimic divine bolts. But the sky is not easily mocked. Zeus, watching from above, grew still as the air before a storm. Then, with a single real bolt of lightning, he struck Salmoneus down, obliterating the man, his chariot, and his kingdom in a heartbeat. Smoke rose like a lesson from the ruins. To claim the thunder is to invite the fire. But not all of Zeus's interactions with mortals were punishments. Sometimes, he lifted them high, not for love, not for vengeance, but for destiny. One such mortal was Deucalion, son of Prometheus, who warned his child of the great flood to come. Zeus, weary of the hubris and filth spreading among men, resolved to wash the world clean. Rain fell like morning, and the seas surged like grief. Only Deucalion and his wife, Pyrrha, survived, floating in a chest upon the endless waters. When the storm at last calmed and the sun returned like a long-lost friend, the couple landed upon Mount Parnassus. There, they were instructed to repopulate the earth not by flesh, but by throwing the bones of their mother, stones of Gaia, over their shoulders. From the stones Deucalion threw came men, and from Pyrrha's, women. Thus the world began anew, the children of rock and will, shaped by grief and hope. Still, even gods must occasionally face the weight of their own blood. Consider Sarpedon, a son of Zeus by the mortal woman Laodamia, a prince of Lycia. He fought valiantly at Troy, his armor gleaming like summer storms. As battle raged and arrows filled the air like a swarm of bees, Sarpedon met Patroclus, beloved of Achilles, and fell beneath his spear. Zeus, watching from the high clouds, felt sorrow pierce him deeper than any weapon. He longed to save his son, to sweep him from the field as he had done for others. But fate, that cruel weaver, had spoken. Even gods must bow to her spindle. Instead, Zeus called upon Apollo to carry Sarpedon's body from the blood-soaked earth, to be washed, anointed, and delivered home. The sky wept, not with rain, but with silence. Zeus's role in mortal wars was not always so passive. At Troy, he balanced the fates of men as a juggler might apples, letting some fall, raising others, shifting loyalties like clouds before wind. He watched Achilles, the storm-footed son of Thetis, and Hector, noble prince of Troy, with the eyes of a father who knows both boys will fall. He listened to the prayers of Agamemnon and the curses of Priam, granting neither victory nor mercy, only inevitability. But the thrum of passion never left him. Though the years rolled on like waves against the shore, Zeus still found himself swayed by beauty. He came to Pluto, who bore him Tantalus, cursed king who fed his own child to the gods and now stands forever in Hades. Neck deep in water he cannot drink, beneath fruit he cannot reach. He came to Iodame, whose glance upon Athena's aegis turned her to stone, and to Elara, whom he hid deep in the earth to protect from Heros' gaze. From her came Tityos, a giant so massive his body spanned 9 acres, now punished in Tartarus with vultures eternally feasting upon his liver. Each story, each name, was a ripple in Zeus's vast pond. His affections, his wrath, his gifts, and his punishments carved the shape of the world like rivers shape stone, slowly, irresistibly, irrevocably. And still the thunder rolled. Still the eagle flew. Still the god watched from his perch on Olympus, the world turning beneath him like a lover shifting in sleep, never quite still, never quite silent. For to be touched by Zeus was to be marked by the sky itself, by storm or by starlight, by crown or by curse. And in the stories whispered beneath olive trees and beside hearths flickering low, his name echoed like a distant rumble, promising power, promising pain, promising that no heart, divine or mortal, would ever beat unchanged beneath the weight of his gaze. The world below was a vast stage for Zeus's passions and judgments, a place where gods and mortals danced like shadows in flickering firelight, each step a story etched into the endless scroll of time. Even as the winds of Olympus whispered tales of love and war, Zeus's eyes often drifted toward the distant horizons, seeking new encounters that would ripple through the ages like thunder rolling across distant mountains. Among these was the tale of Europa, a maiden whose beauty bloomed like spring flowers after a long winter, delicate yet fierce, shining with the promise of kingdoms yet to rise. Europa wandered along the shore, her feet sinking softly into the warm sand, gathering blossoms and singing to the gulls that wheeled above like silver knives against the blue. Zeus, struck by her radiance, transformed himself into a great white bull, his coat shining like fresh-fallen snow under a full moon. He approached Europa with the gentleness of a summer breeze, the soft nuzzle of his muzzle a whispered promise. Entranced, she climbed upon his back, her laughter like bells ringing through the air. Then, with a sudden surge like a wave crashing onto rocks, Zeus carried her across the wine-dark sea to the island of Crete, where olive trees whispered secrets and the earth held ancient magic in its roots. There, Europa bore him sons destined to rule lands and found myths that would echo in the voices of kings and poets. But such stories were rarely free of turmoil. Heros' wrath simmered like a dark cloud, ever threatening to burst. Zeus's love for Io, a priestess with eyes like the tempest sea, brought both joy and sorrow. When Heros' jealousy drove Zeus to transform Io into a white heifer, the poor girl wandered the earth, tormented by a gadfly that stung her unceasingly, her sorrow marking rivers and mountains with tears turned to streams and lakes. Her journey was long and harrowing, crossing deserts and seas, until finally Zeus restored her form in the land of Egypt, where she became a queen and bore Epiphus, whose descendants shaped civilizations. And then there was Ganymede, the Trojan prince whose beauty rivaled that of any god or mortal. Zeus, captivated beyond measure, descended as an eagle with wings spanning the sky, snatching Ganymede away to Olympus. There, the youth became cupbearer to the gods, serving nectar with grace and becoming immortal, his image immortalized among the stars as Aquarius, pouring waters that bless the earth. In these loves, Zeus revealed not only the fire of desire but the shadow of consequence. The children born from his unions, heroes, kings, gods, carried his blood and his burden, their fates intertwined with the whims of the divine. Some, like Heracles, would rise through trials of fire and shadow, while others, like Dionysus, would bring both joy and madness to the world. Yet amidst all the passion and power, Zeus's heart was also a seat of law and order. With the Mys, the embodiment of divine justice, he fathered the Horai, the keepers of seasons and natural order, and the Moirai, the fates who spun, measured, and cut the thread of mortal lives. These daughters reminded Zeus that even gods must bow to the eternal flow of destiny and balance. From his throne wrapped in clouds, Zeus watched the world turn, his thunder rolling across the sky like a reminder of his presence, sometimes gentle as rain upon thirsty earth, sometimes fierce as lightning splitting ancient oaks. His story was one of endless motion, like the ceaseless dance of stars in the night, a tapestry woven of love, power, wrath, and mercy. And as the world slept beneath the watchful gaze of the gods, the name Zeus echoed softly through dreams, a lullaby of thunder promising that the storm was never far away. Zeus's realm was not only of passion and decree but also of transformation and disguise, for the king of gods knew that to win the heart of those he desired, he must sometimes weave himself into shapes and shadows as fluid as the clouds around his throne. This art of shifting was a dance of gods, a game played beneath moonlight and whispered winds, where form and essence mingled like colors bleeding on a painter's canvas. One of the most famous of these tales was the story of Danae, a princess locked away by her father in a bronze tower, as impenetrable and cold as winter's heart. King Acrisius had heard a prophecy that his daughter's son would bring his downfall, so he tried to cage fate itself in stone and iron. But Zeus, relentless as the tide, found a way through. He came to Danae not as a roaring god, but as a shower of golden rain, gentle and warm, spilling through the cracks and pooling softly at her feet. From this miraculous embrace, Perseus was born, a hero whose destiny would be etched in legends of valor and cunning. Perseus grew under the shadow of prophecy, a child born of light and storm, destined to slay the Gorgon Medusa and rescue Andromeda from the jaws of sea monsters. His birth was a reminder that even the strongest walls cannot hold back the will of the gods. Another tale wove itself through the olive groves and rocky hills of Crete, where Europa's sons would rise to power. Zeus's love for Europa was one of both tenderness and boldness, carried across the sea on the back of a white bull, whose strength was matched only by his gentle grace. Europa's children, including Minos, would shape the course of kingdoms, judges of gods and men, weaving laws and legends alike. Yet Zeus's heart was a restless flame, flickering toward many who stirred the world's breath. He came to Alcmene disguised as her husband Amphitryon, stretching a single night into three to kindle a love that bore Heracles, the strongest of mortals and the god-touched hero whose labors would echo through eternity. Heracles's life was a tapestry of trials and triumphs, pain and glory, woven tightly with threads of Zeus's blood and Hera's relentless wrath. The queen of gods, fierce in jealousy, sent serpents to the infant's cradle and storms to shadow his path, yet Heracles's strength and courage blazed like the sun itself, defying even divine ire. In the realm of the nymphs, Zeus's passions took yet more forms. He wooed Callisto, a devoted huntress of Artemis, under false guise, and from their union came a child marked by both love and tragedy. Hera's vengeance turned Callisto into a bear, a creature of wild forests and moonlit nights, and her son nearly killed her in unknowing rage. Zeus, moved by sorrow, placed them among the stars as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, immortalizing their story in the night sky where their forms dance forever in celestial embrace. These stories of love, disguise, and transformation were threads in the vast tapestry of Zeus's life, each a ripple in the pond of time, each a spark in the ever-burning fire of myth. Through them, Zeus showed himself as not just a god of thunder and power, but as a being shaped by desire and cunning, by tenderness and ruthlessness, by the endless dance of light and shadow that defines all existence. The world, beneath his watchful eye, breathed with these stories, each one a testament to the complex heart of the king of gods, whose loves shaped the fates of gods and mortals alike, whose thunder still echoed in the quiet moments before sleep, promising that beneath every dream, the storm was waiting. Zeus's reach extended far beyond the gilded halls of Olympus, weaving through the mortal world like the restless wind that bends the tallest oaks and ripples the deepest lakes. His loves were not confined to goddesses or princesses alone. Sometimes his desire kindled in the hearts of nymphs, creatures born of streams, forests, and mountains, each embodying a fragment of the natural world, fleeting and eternal as the dawn. One such nymph was Callisto, whose beauty was as radiant as the first light filtering through leaves, and whose loyalty to Artemis was as fierce as the winter's bite. Zeus, ever the shapeshifter, approached her under the guise of Artemis herself, laughter in his voice and the scent of pine in his breath. Callisto, deceived and enchanted, surrendered to the god's embrace, and from their union was born Arcas, a child destined to walk between worlds, carrying the blood of both mortal and divine. Hera's fury was swift and merciless. In a jealous rage, she transformed Callisto into a bear, casting her into the wilds where she roamed beneath the silver gaze of the moon. Yet even in this cruel punishment, Zeus's compassion found a way. To protect mother and son from mortal hunters and Hera's wrath, he placed them among the stars, where they became Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, bear and cub forever circling the celestial pole, their forms shining like ancient lanterns against the velvet night. Zeus's loves were often tangled with fate's sharp edges, where joy and sorrow blended like storm clouds on the horizon. Take the story of Semele, a mortal woman whose beauty and spirit drew Zeus's gaze like a moth to flame. Their love was tender and secret, wrapped in the softness of night and whispered promises. But Hera, ever vigilant, disguised herself and planted seeds of doubt in Semele's heart, urging her to demand proof of Zeus's divinity. Bound by his sacred word, Zeus revealed his true form, lightning and thunder made flesh, and Semele was consumed in the brilliance, her mortal frame unable to withstand the god's power. Yet from the ashes of her death rose Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and rebirth, carried in Zeus's thigh until the time was ripe for birth. Dionysus embodied the wildness of life itself, the intoxication of freedom and the bitter sweetness of loss, forever a reminder of the cost and beauty of divine love. In the mortal realm, Zeus's children walked paths marked by both glory and hardship. Heracles, born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, was a titan among men, his strength unmatched and his labors legendary. Yet Hera's jealousy shadowed his every step, sending serpents to his cradle and madness to his mind, challenges that forged him into a hero whose story would echo through the ages. With Leda, Zeus took the form of a swan, feathers soft as snowfall, and seduced her beneath the shade of whispering willows. From their union came Helen, whose beauty would ignite the fires of the Trojan War, and Clytemnestra, a queen whose fate was woven with betrayal and blood. Zeus's loves often bore the seeds of both creation and destruction, a duality that mirrored the sky itself, nurturing rains followed by storms, gentle breezes preceding thunderclaps. He was a god whose heart beat to the rhythm of the world's endless cycles, a force both tender and terrible. Through all his many loves and legacies, Zeus remained the unyielding king of gods and men, his thunder a voice that could comfort or command, his lightning a touch that could bless or burn. The stories spun around his name were as countless as stars, each one a flicker of light in the vast darkness, a whisper of love and power carried on the wind, promising that no matter where one looked, across mountains, seas, or human hearts, Zeus's presence would always be felt, like the steady pulse of the sky itself. Zeus's love stories wove through the tapestry of the mortal and divine alike, but not all his affections were sweet or simple. Some burned with the fierce fire of tragedy, their flames casting long shadows that stretched across generations. One such tale is that of Io, whose fate was bound tightly to the whims of gods and the jealous ire of Hera. Io, a priestess of Hera, was as radiant as moonlight upon a still lake, her presence gentle yet undeniable. Zeus, captivated by her beauty and grace, sought her favor beneath the shroud of clouds and storms, for Hera's watchful eyes could not be fooled. Yet even the might of Zeus was no shield against the queen's wrath. When Hera discovered their secret, she transformed Io into a white heifer, her eyes wide with fear yet still holding the flicker of the woman within. Hera appointed Argus, a giant with 100 ever-watchful eyes, to guard the transformed Io, ensuring that no mortal or god might deliver her from her prison. But Zeus, unwilling to abandon his love, sent Hermes, the cunning messenger, to free Io. With melodies soft as whispers and trickery sharp as a serpent's tooth, Hermes lulled Argus to sleep, one eye at a time, until all were closed. Then, with swift hands, he freed Io, setting her upon a path of wandering that would stretch across continents and seas. Yet Hera's vengeance was unrelenting. She sent a gadfly to torment Io, its stings biting like fire and driving her onward in a desperate flight across deserts and mountains. Io's journey was one of endurance and sorrow, her footsteps marking rivers and lands that would later carry her name. Finally, in the distant land of Egypt, Zeus restored her to her true form, and from their union was born Epiphus, a son destined to link mortal kingdoms with divine bloodlines. The story of Io was a river of pain and hope, flowing endlessly through myth, a reminder that love with Zeus was as often a tempest as a lullaby. And yet, amidst such trials, Zeus's love could also birth heroes and legends. Take the tale of Perseus, son of Danae, whose very birth was a miracle woven from golden rain and fate. Locked away by her father to thwart prophecy, Danae could not escape Zeus's embrace, which came gently, shimmering like liquid sunlight. Perseus grew to be a hero of unmatched courage, wielding gifts from gods and triumphing over monsters, his name forever carved into the stones of legend. His story was one of hope sprung from captivity, light breaking through iron bars, a testament to the will of the gods and the resilience of mortals. Zeus's loves were many and varied, nymphs, princesses, goddesses, and mortals all caught in the weaving of his desires. From Callisto, transformed and immortalized among the stars, to Semele, whose fiery death gave birth to the god of wine and madness. From Ganymede, carried to Olympus to serve among the gods, to Europa, whose voyage on the back of the white bull changed the fate of kingdoms. Each tale shimmered with the complex hues of passion, power, loss, and transformation. The thunder of Zeus's heart echoed not only in storms but in the very pulse of the world. His loves shaped mountains and rivers, kings and heroes, weaving an endless saga where the divine and mortal intertwined like roots beneath the earth. And as night falls and stars kindle the sky, the stories of Zeus's life and loves drift softly into dreams, a lullaby of thunder and light promising that the storm, with all its fury and grace, is never far away. Among the countless tales woven around Zeus's life, none captured the intricate dance of love, power, and consequence better than his union with Hera, the queen of the gods herself, a love forged in tempest and tenderness, rivalry and respect. Their story was like the meeting of two mighty rivers, each carving its path through the earth, merging sometimes in raging torrents, other times flowing side by side with steady strength. Hera, born of Titans Cronus and Rhea, was as radiant as the dawn and as fierce as the noonday sun. She was goddess of marriage and family, protector of women and children, yet also a figure marked by pride and a relentless sense of justice. When Zeus sought her hand, it was a union not just of passion but of power, a joining of two forces destined to rule Olympus's heights. But their marriage was far from serene. Zeus's countless infidelities cast shadows over their union like thunderclouds blotting the sky, and Hera's jealousy flared like wildfire, igniting struggles that rippled through the divine and mortal worlds alike. She was both wife and adversary, guardian and tormentor, her love intertwined with anger as tightly as ivy wraps around ancient stone. Together, they bore children who embodied the breadth of the cosmos: Ars, god of war, whose fierce heart beat with the drums of battle and whose rage was a storm breaking upon the battlefield; Hebe, goddess of youth, who poured nectar to sustain the gods' eternal vigor, a symbol of renewal and grace; and Hephaestus, master of fire and forge, whose hammer shaped the weapons and wonders of Olympus, though his own story was marked by rejection and resilience. Their children were reflections of the complex nature of their parents' bond, powerful, flawed, and deeply human in their struggles and strengths. Hera's wrath against Zeus's lovers and illegitimate children was legendary. She pursued them with relentless fury, weaving curses and hardships that tested their very souls. But her actions, though cruel, were rooted in a fierce protectiveness and a wounded heart, the eternal conflict between love and betrayal playing out in immortal drama. Zeus himself was not immune to the challenges of this marriage. Zeus, the mighty ruler of Olympus, was a god whose presence stretched across the heavens like a storm gathering strength, immense, unpredictable, and alive with raw power. He was not merely a god of thunder and lightning but the embodiment of authority, justice, and the balance between chaos and order. His voice could roll through the skies like a drumbeat summoning the seasons, his eyes flashing with the fire of stars born in the heart of creation. Born to the Titans Cronus and Rhea in an age when gods themselves were young and the earth was still fresh with possibility, Zeus's very birth was wrapped in danger and cunning. To save him from the devouring jaws of Cronus, who swallowed his children to prevent being overthrown, Zeus was hidden away in a cave on Crete, nurtured by nymphs and fed by the sweet honey of the gods. There, shielded by the rustling of olive trees and the gentle murmur of hidden springs, he grew strong and wise, learning the secrets of the earth and sky. When the time came, Zeus rose like a tempest unleashed, challenging his father and the old order with the fierce determination of a mountain stream carving a new path through ancient stone. The Titanomachy, the great war between the old Titans and the new Olympians, was thunder and fury incarnate, with Zeus leading the charge, wielding his mighty thunderbolt forged by the Cyclopes, lightning itself captured and bound to his will. His victory was not just conquest but the dawn of a new age, where order began to emerge from the chaos, and the world found its rhythm. But Zeus's rule was more than power. It was the weaving of laws and fates, a balance held as delicately as a spider's web shimmering with morning dew. He was the arbiter of justice among gods and mortals, the upholder of oaths, the breaker of promises. His decisions rippled through kingdoms like waves upon the shore, shaping destinies and histories. Mortals looked to him as the sky itself, vast and unknowable, a presence both protective and fearsome. His symbol, the eagle, soared like a sentinel across the blue vault, eyes sharp and ever watchful. Beneath his gaze, men and women found both mercy and punishment, blessings and trials. Zeus was a god of contradictions, majestic yet approachable, distant yet intimately woven into the fabric of life. He could be both wrathful and benevolent, his thunder a warning or a benediction, his lightning a scourge or a guide. His stories spoke of passion and wisdom, of mercy and might, reflecting the complexities of the world he ruled. His court on Olympus was a place of grandeur and intrigue, where gods gathered like stars circling a mighty sun. There, Zeus's word was law, but his decisions were tempered by counsel and debate, a reminder that even the greatest must listen and weigh the scales of fate carefully. Though he wielded immense power, Zeus was not immune to the passions and pains that marked existence. His love sparked legends, his wrath shaped worlds, and his mercy brought hope. Like the ever-changing sky he ruled, Zeus was eternal motion, storm and calm, fire and shadow, strength and subtlety. In every flash of lightning and roll of thunder, in every oath sworn beneath the open heavens, his presence was felt, a god forever entwined with the breath of the earth and the pulse of the skies, a king whose story was written not just in myth but in the very heartbeats of the world. Zeus's life was a mosaic of stories, each a small gem sparkling with wonder and warning, a breath of myth carried on the wind like whispers beneath ancient olive trees. Among these tales was the story of Semele, a mortal woman whose love for Zeus was as bright and fragile as a flame dancing in the night. Their passion burned hot and fierce, but Hero's jealousy wove a cruel trap. Disguised as a wise old woman, she planted doubt in Semele's heart, urging her to demand proof of Zeus's divine nature. Bound by his oath, Zeus revealed himself in all his glory, thunder and lightning bursting forth like the very sun breaking through storm clouds. Semele, unable to bear such radiance, was consumed in the divine fire, but from her ashes arose Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, whose laughter and madness would forever stir the souls of gods and mortals alike. Another tale whispered among the hills was that of Callisto, a maiden devoted to Artemis, whose life was forever changed by Zeus's desire. Taking the form of the huntress herself, Zeus seduced Callisto, and from their union came a child. Hera, burning with wrath, transformed Callisto into a bear, forcing her into the wilds. Yet Zeus's mercy shone through the darkness. He placed Callisto and her son among the stars, where they became Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, shining guides for sailors and dreamers beneath the endless night sky. Then there was the story of Ganymede, the beautiful Trojan prince whose charm was such that Zeus, in the form of a great eagle with wings like thunderclouds, carried him away to Olympus. There, Ganymede served as cupbearer to the gods, a role of honor and immortality. His story was a tender reminder that even the king of gods could be moved by beauty and youth, lifting mortals into the realm of the divine. In the realm of heroes, Zeus's touch was both a blessing and a challenge. Heracles, born of Zeus's union with Alcmene, was a child of immense strength and will, but also of great trials. Hera's relentless fury shadowed his life, sending serpents to his cradle and madness to his mind. Yet Heracles' spirit blazed brighter than any storm, and his 12 labors became legends sung across generations, a testament to endurance, courage, and the complex legacy of Zeus's love. In quieter moments, Zeus's presence could be found in the natural world, the crack of thunder after a summer storm, the flash of lightning illuminating a dark sky, the eagle soaring high above mountain peaks. His voice was the breath of the wind through ancient forests, the rumble beneath the earth when it shifts and trembles. Through every story, every whisper of myth, Zeus remained the eternal force, the god whose life and loves shaped the heavens and the earth alike, whose thunder echoed like a lullaby promising that beneath every storm, there was a story waiting to be told. There was once the tale of Asclepius, a mortal blessed with the healing touch of the gods, whose story was closely entwined with Zeus's will and mercy. Asclepius was born to the mortal woman Coronis and Apollo, yet it was Zeus who watched over his fate like a careful gardener tending a fragile bloom. Asclepius grew to master the art of medicine, healing wounds that would have been death sentences, bringing hope where despair had taken root. His skill grew so great that whispers spread among mortals and immortals alike, that he could even raise the dead from their slumber. This power, though miraculous, stirred unease in the heart of Hades, lord of the underworld, for the balance between life and death was a delicate thread that even gods must respect. When Asclepius defied this boundary, Zeus's thunderous judgment came swift and absolute. With a bolt of lightning sharp as fate itself, Zeus struck down the healer, reminding all that even the gods upheld laws that bound both mortals and immortals. Yet, in his mercy, Zeus later placed Asclepius among the stars as a constellation, a shining healer guiding those who seek cure and comfort. Another story carried on the winds was that of the eagle, Zeus's sacred bird, whose loyalty and might were unmatched in all of Olympus. It was said that once Zeus sent his eagle to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by nymphs at the edge of the world, a quest filled with peril and wonder. The eagle's flight was like a bolt of pure light across the sky, swift and sure, embodying the spirit of the king of gods. Wherever the eagle soared, its shadow was a promise of Zeus's watchful eye and unyielding power. In the shadowed woods, the tale of Amalthea spoke of a nurturing goat who fed the infant Zeus with her milk, her horns shimmering like silver in the night. When Zeus grew to power, he honored her by transforming her horn into the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, symbolizing abundance and the blessings the gods could bestow. This gift, spilling with fruit and grain, became a symbol of nourishment and generosity, a reminder that even in thunder and storm, there was kindness and care. Zeus's stories also wove through the fates of mortals like Lycaon, king of Arcadia, whose hubris and cruelty drew the gods' wrath like a lightning bolt seeking its mark. Lycaon, who dared to test Zeus by serving him a meal of human flesh, was transformed into a wolf, a creature torn between man and beast, forever howling at the moon as punishment and warning. Through such tales, Zeus's power was made clear, to uphold justice and remind mortals that no transgression went unseen or unpunished. These stories, small yet shimmering with divine light, were the threads of the vast tapestry of Zeus's life, each one a spark in the endless storm, a ripple in the sky's eternal dance. They whispered through olive groves, echoed over mountaintops, and settled softly in the dreams of those who listened, carrying the eternal promise that the King of Gods was ever near, his thunder a lullaby and his lightning a guide. There was the tale of Prometheus, the titan who dared to steal fire from the gods and gift it to mankind, a story woven deeply into Zeus's reign and the fragile balance between punishment and progress. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was wise beyond his kind, seeing the spark of potential flickering in humanity's eyes and yearning to kindle it into a flame. Against Zeus's stern decree, he plucked fire from the glowing hearth of Olympus and brought it down to earth, a gift wrapped in warmth and danger alike. The fire was a beacon of hope, a flame that would light the darkness of ignorance and empower mortals to craft tools, build civilizations, and dream beyond survival. But Zeus's anger thundered like a storm unleashed. To punish Prometheus and warn mankind of the price of defiance, Zeus bound the Titan to a desolate cliff, where each day an eagle, Zeus's sacred messenger, would feast upon his liver, only for it to grow back with the endless resilience of suffering and time. This eternal torment was a grim reminder that divine laws were not to be broken lightly. Yet, even in punishment, there was a shadow of respect. Prometheus's sacrifice was a catalyst for human advancement, a symbol of defiance and hope etched forever into the mythic landscape. Another quiet yet powerful story was that of the Mys, the titan of divine law and order, who stood as Zeus's counselor and balance. Together, they wove the threads of justice that held the cosmos in harmony. Themis's daughters, the Moirai or Fates, spun the threads of mortal lives, measuring and cutting them with impartial hands. Even Zeus, mighty king of gods, bowed to their decrees, reminding all that some powers transcended even the thunderbolt's reach. In the realm of mortals, Zeus's judgments often came wrapped in riddles and omens, subtle as the shifting winds and as clear as lightning splitting the night. The story of King Midas, granted the golden touch by Dionysus but cursed for his greed, was shaped by Zeus's sense of balance, rewarding excess only to reveal its folly. Through such tales, mortals learned that divine favor was a gift to be cherished and wisdom a treasure beyond gold. And then there was the legend of Europa's sons, whose lineages shaped kingdoms and histories. Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon, born of Zeus's union with Europa, became judges of the dead and rulers of men, embodying the blend of mortal duty and divine authority. Their stories trace the threads of law, honor, and fate, showing how Zeus's blood flowed not only in the veins of gods but also in the heartbeats of kings and heroes. Zeus's dominion was vast, his stories countless, each one a star in the dark tapestry of myth. He was thunder and shadow, light and storm, king and lover, judge and father, a god whose life echoed through time like the eternal pulse of the sky itself. And in every whisper of wind, every flash of lightning, every rumble of distant thunder, his presence remained, an unending story told beneath the stars, a lullaby of power and mystery that cradled the world to sleep. In the quiet moments between storms, when the world seemed to hold its breath beneath the vast, starlit sky, Zeus's presence was felt in stories of mercy and protection that softened his thunderous image like morning light spilling over a rugged mountain peak. One such tale was that of Leda, queen of Sparta, whose beauty was likened to the soft glow of the moon reflecting on still waters. Zeus, captivated by her grace, transformed into a magnificent swan, feathers gleaming like freshly fallen snow, and approached her with a gentleness that belied his immense power. From their union came children destined to shape history: Helen, whose beauty would ignite the flames of the Trojan War, and Clytemnestra, whose life would weave tragedy and betrayal into the fabric of myth. This story was a delicate dance of light and shadow, where love and fate intertwined like ivy around ancient stone, a reminder that even gods moved with subtlety amid the storm. Another whisper of Zeus's softer side was found in the tale of the seasons, born from his union with the goddess Demeter, keeper of the earth's bounty. Their daughter Persephone's descent into the underworld cast a shadow of grief over Demeter, who caused the earth to wither and lie barren like a silent, frozen lake. Yet Zeus, balancing sorrow and duty, brokered a compromise, allowing Persephone to return for part of the year, restoring life and growth to the land. This cycle of loss and renewal echoed through the changing seasons, a living testament to Zeus's role as both bringer of storms and guardian of life's delicate rhythms. In the quiet corners of myth, the story of Alcmene and the birth of Heracles shone like a beacon of hope and struggle. Zeus, disguised as her husband Amphitryon, stretched a single night into three, weaving a tapestry of love and deception that brought forth a child destined for greatness and hardship. Heracles' journey was marked by feats that tested the limits of mortal endurance, his strength a gift from Zeus tempered by Hera's relentless wrath. This story was a symphony of light and shadow, where divine favor and human resilience played in harmony, a lullaby whispered beneath the stars that promised strength born from struggle. Zeus's influence stretched even into the stars themselves, where myths told of constellations shaped by his hand: Orion the hunter, placed among the heavens for his bravery; Cassiopeia, the vain queen, whose seat spins eternally in the night sky; and of course, the great eagle, soaring forever as a symbol of Zeus's watchful eye. These celestial stories were like threads of silver woven through the dark fabric of night, connecting gods and mortals in an eternal embrace. Through every tale, every whispered legend, Zeus's presence was a constant, sometimes fierce as a summer storm, sometimes gentle as a lullaby carried on the wind. His life and loves were a vast tapestry, shimmering with the light of countless stars and the rumble of distant thunder, a story told and retold beneath the ever-watchful sky, cradling the world in a lullaby of power, passion, and endless wonder. Zeus's tales often crossed paths with those of mortals who, touched by his power or favor, became entwined in destinies that shimmered with both glory and tragedy. Take the story of Cadmus, founder of Thebes, whose quest to find his sister Europa led him deep into lands where dragons slumbered and gods whispered secrets through rustling leaves. Guided by a mysterious cow, whose steady steps marked the path Zeus had set, Cadmus ventured into unknown wilds, where he slew a fearsome dragon guarding a sacred spring. From the dragon's teeth he sowed warriors who sprang up like dark shoots from fertile earth, destined to fight and shape the city's fate. This tale was a dance of birth and destruction, a reflection of Zeus's own power to create and unravel, to bless and challenge. Meanwhile, in the realms of love and deception, Zeus's cunning was as sharp as his lightning bolt. He took the form of a humble shepherd to woo the beautiful Alcmene, weaving night into day to extend his time with her, and thus fathered Heracles, whose strength would shake the foundations of both gods and men. Yet even in these mortal affairs, the shadows of jealousy and vengeance followed, Hera's wrath burning like wildfire, sending storms and monsters to test the hero's spirit. Elsewhere, the story of Io's endless wanderings, pursued by the relentless gadfly sent by Hera, traced the geography of the ancient world. From the fields of Argos to the Nile's fertile banks, her flight was etched into rivers and deserts, marking the earth with sorrow and endurance, a living map of divine punishment and mercy intertwined. Each myth spun from Zeus's life was a thread pulled taut between power and vulnerability, a vast tapestry without end, where gods and mortals danced beneath the ever-changing sky. Zeus's children were as numerous and varied as the stars scattered across the night sky, each bearing a fragment of his divine power and complex nature. Among them were gods who ruled the heavens and earth, heroes who walked the mortal realm with extraordinary gifts, and figures whose lives echoed with tales of struggle, triumph, and transformation. Athena, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead, was the goddess of wisdom, courage, and strategy. Her birth was unlike any other, a thunderclap of intellect and strength that echoed through Olympus. She was the calm eye of the storm, a guiding light for heroes like Odysseus and Perseus, who relied on her counsel as much as their own valor. A protector of cities and crafts, Athena embodied the balance between reason and power, a daughter who reflected Zeus's own role as king and judge. Apollo and Artemis, twin children of Zeus and the goddess Leto, represented the duality of light and shadow, of life and death. Apollo, god of the sun, music, and prophecy, radiated warmth and inspiration, his lyre weaving melodies that could soothe or stir the soul. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and wilderness, moved like a silver arrow through forests and moonlight, fierce and free, a protector of young women and animals alike. Together, they held sway over the natural world and human destiny, their lives entwined with stories of love, vengeance, and sacred duty. Ares, the god of war, was another son of Zeus, embodying the brutal and chaotic side of battle. His presence on the field was like a storm unleashed, fierce and unrelenting, yet often reckless and impetuous. Though not beloved by all gods, Ares was a necessary force, a reminder that conflict and passion were woven into the fabric of existence. Hebe, goddess of youth and cupbearer to the gods, symbolized renewal and vitality. Her grace was a gentle counterpoint to the more tempestuous children of Zeus, pouring nectar that sustained the immortals' eternal life and offering a glimpse of endless possibility. Hephaestus, god of fire and craftsmanship, was born both gifted and burdened. His forge shaped weapons and wonders, yet his lameness and rejection by Hera cast long shadows over his life. Despite this, Hephaestus's creations were vital to the gods and heroes, his skill a testament to perseverance and hidden strength. Among mortal children, Heracles stood as the mightiest, a hero whose feats tested the limits of human endurance and divine favor. Born of Zeus and Alcmene, Heracles' life was a tapestry of trials, each labor a storm he weathered with strength and wit. His story was one of suffering and redemption, his mortal struggles reflecting the complexities of his divine heritage. The children of Zeus, gods, and mortals alike, formed a sprawling family whose stories were as intertwined and unpredictable as the weather he ruled. Each bore a spark of his thunder, a piece of his power, and a share in the eternal dance of fate that shaped the heavens and the earth. Among Zeus's children, the story of Perseus shines like a beacon carved from lightning and courage. Born to Danae after Zeus visited her as a golden shower, Perseus's life was marked by prophecy and peril from the start. Locked away in a bronze tower by her father to prevent the fulfillment of a dire fate, Danae could not escape Zeus's reach, and from their union came a hero destined to wield both divine gifts and mortal cunning. Perseus's adventures read like a song of light against darkness. Armed with gifts from the gods, a reflective shield from Athena, a sharp sword from Hephaestus, and winged sandals from Hermes, he embarked on a quest to slay Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone. The moment he beheaded her, the earth trembled, and Pegasus, the winged horse, sprang forth like a sudden storm from her blood. Perseus's bravery and wit, combined with the gods' blessings, carved his name into legend, his tale a blend of destiny and defiance that echoed the very nature of his father. Then there was Helen of Troy, born from Zeus's union with Leda in the guise of a swan, her beauty so radiant it was said to launch 1,000 ships. Helen's life was a thread that wove through the epic tapestry of the Trojan War, where gods and mortals clashed beneath the walls of Troy, passion and pride setting the world aflame. Her story was both a gift and a curse, a living testament to the power and peril that came with being a child of Zeus. Among the children of Zeus were also those whose lives were touched by sorrow and struggle. Take the tale of Minos, king of Crete, son of Zeus and Europa. Known as a wise judge in both mortal and divine courts, Minos' story was entwined with labyrinths and monsters, a reflection of the complex legacies born from Zeus's many loves. His lineage carried echoes of divine authority and human frailty, a reminder that even God's children bore the weight of mortal fate. Zeus's children also included the lesser-known but no less important figures like the Charits, or Graces, goddesses of charm, beauty, and creativity who moved through the world like soft breezes, inspiring art and joy. They embodied the gentler aspects of Zeus's power, the light that softened thunder into music and celebration. The stories of Zeus's children were endless, each one a thread woven into the vast fabric of myth, their lives a mirror reflecting the many facets of their father, strength and wisdom, passion and wrath, grace and challenge. They moved through the world like sparks from his thunderbolt, each carrying a piece of the storm's wild and eternal energy.